Hey, and welcome to the Third Testament Foundation live stream. Today I found a little book that Martino said was good to use for introduction, and he talks a little bit about his mission and his awakening that he had. He calls it the day he received cosmic consciousness, right? So. Um, So before we read some excerpts from the book, I'm just gonna briefly introduce the concept of cosmic consciousness. And as always, all the symbols are copyright of Martinez Institute. And if you want, you can text or call in with questions, and uh, we can take up the topics after the talk or at the next talk. So you text in your message 1-941-462-3177. So if you look at the main symbol of Martinus, we see that there is this 6 colors in a circle around a star, and those 6 colors symbolize a spiral cycle. We see that planet Earth is in the spiral cycle, situated right here and going towards a star. And what that symbolizes is actually that the Earth, once it reaches this 5-pointed star, it will experience cosmic consciousness. And the Earth is alive; it's a living being. Like to Martinus, as he explains in the Third Testament, everything is alive. So that's galaxies and clusters of galaxies, planets, solar systems, our human beings, and whatever organs we have in our body and cells and atoms, it's all alive. It's living beings. So we are living beings within living beings. So we're living beings on the planet Earth. And because the Earth is going to go through this great awakening that Martinus calls the Great Birth, we as living beings on the planet are also going to experience the effect of that. So, and that is this great birth, which is the entrance into the real human kingdom, is what Martinus calls cosmic consciousness. Once the consciousness of the planet is cosmic, then we have the great birth. And what that means is the intuition body is activated. In order for the intuition body to activate, we have to have total love or unconditional love, yeah, all love, and that is the what takes the intuition body out of its latent state and into its first stage of activation towards culmination. So we see how this planet going out of the animal kingdom, which is symbolized by the orange color, into the human kingdom, which is symbolized by the yellow color. And there's more and more yellows, though the planet obviously is going counterclockwise in this spiral cycle. And inevitably, there will be more and more yellow, which is the feeling energy of the energy of love, neighborly love, and less of the orange, which is the energy of killing, or the gravity energy. So Martinus actually, when he was 30 years old, experienced this great birth, and that's what he talks about in this book called On the Birth of My Mission, and that we're going to read some chapters from today. And if we see this star, it kind of goes, it appears in different symbols. So we see the star here, and that is this place in evolution, in this stage in evolution of living beings, where the beings experience the activation of their intuition body. And that is for planets as well as living beings, humans, and organs and cells and so forth. So this is the actual stage in the spiral cycle that where the great birth takes place, which means the activation of the intuition body and also what is called the cosmic consciousness. When we experience that, we can see also here again the star reappears, and so that means that this evolutionary stage here again is the same evolutionary stage. And also we see it in this symbol here. We see the star up here, yeah. This 5-pointed yellow star also signifies or symbolizes cosmic consciousness or the great birth. And what happens to the perception of a living being who experiences the great birth? We see here again the entrance into the real human kingdom, symbolized by yellow, right, with the star again. So what happens to the senses of a being who experiences the great birth is that we can see here is in Roman numerals 3. This is the being with cosmic consciousness. We see how that being is able to see the x1, x2, and x3. And that means to perceive not only the physical world or the world of x3 like this being here in Roman numerals 2 is able to do exclusively, but the being with cosmic consciousness is able to actually see God. And that's what we talked about in the last segment, right? What that means. So the ability to see God or to experience one's own X1 or eternal identity. So that is only possible with cosmic consciousness. So yes, and with that in mind, I think we should start reading some chapters from the book On the Birth of My Mission by Martinez. And I picked chapters 7 through 12. So I'm just going to start reading that and see where it takes us. So, chapter 7. It is not the object of the initiated to plagiarize the manifestations of other initiated individuals, but only mentally and morally to deepen man's comprehension of life. So when he talks about the initiated, this here is the one that has experienced cosmic consciousness, right? So this is the one who has activated their intuition body through the moral evolution and the evolution of all love. So we need this love and humility before we can activate our intuition body. So what does he actually say here? When the Spirit of God overshadows an individual in his physical life, it is exclusively in order to convey something new to the human race, so as to raise the ethical standard to a still higher level. The initiated mediator, therefore, will never undertake to plagiarize what has already been communicated or revealed by the Spirit of God through the instrumentality of any other initiated individual. New wine is not put into old leather bottles. The initiate has always come to the world in order to disclose or reveal a continuance of the divine plan for human existence. Consequently, he will always thwart traditions and dogmas that are out of date by exploding all prejudices. If he did not do so, if he confined himself to what thousands of clergymen, religious speakers, and others, according to messages propounded by inspired leaders of the past, keep on repeating throughout the world, what would be the use of his manifestation? In order to reiterate what has been preached for centuries, there would be no need of any overshadowing by the Holy Spirit. no initiation, no cosmic consciousness or vision. The clear-sighted initiate accordingly is not called upon to replace the manifestation of another equally initiated individual, whoever he may be. His mission in life is solely that of producing fresh material for the expansion of mankind's mentality, morality, and understanding of the true, real life behind all outer phenomena. It behooves you therefore to react circumspectly whenever you hear anyone tell you things that you have not been accustomed to acknowledge in the way of morals or ideals. You might meet with a new messenger of God, and now suppose that you were to censor, defame, and oppose his mission. Would you not thereby be opposing God himself, thus making naught of the promises couched in your own religion by counteracting the consummation of the highest human aspirations? You may be a clergyman, a member of the Oxford or evangelical movement, an Adventist, a Spiritist. You may embrace the anthroposophical or theosophical persuasion, etc., all of which does not exempt you from acting according to your own personal responsibility. Was it not the very chief priest himself that became a Caiaphas? Was it not, moreover, among all the rest in whom the official dignity as moral guardians was vested, the most zealous advocates for the crucifixion of Christ were found? And did not Jesus himself say that the first shall be the last? It is hardly this position you aspire to. So be on your guard, lest sooner or later you may be confronted with a corresponding problem, however self-confident in your own salvation you may feel today. Chapter 8. 3 Reactions to my account of the birth of my mission. When in so many words I have addressed myself to you, my patient reader, it is because you now, if you continue to follow me, will have your capacity of love put to the test. By your attitude to the present account, you will have to choose between 2 ways of reacting, unless you do not at all feel qualified to side with or against me, and so remain neutral. If this is not the case, so if you're not neutral, you will either understand me and rejoice at my disclosure and start along the path leading to redemption, towards perennial peace on earth, so devoutly desired, or you will be irritated, grow intolerant, consider me a minion of darkness, and try to obstruct my way or harm me, thereby taking a path leading to war, grief, mutilation, and suffering, wholly irrespective of how religious you may consider yourself. In the latter case, you will belong to the category of whom it will be most proper to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is for your guidance in your reflections, so that you may, not in advance, without basic circumspection, try to oppose what you are now going to learn. And let me once more remind you of the superb admonition of your own religion. Watch and pray, that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Therefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. My wish for my readers. Now perhaps the following question about my own person may have turned up in your mind. Do these admonitory words that you have been addressing to me denote that you yourself are overshadowed by the Holy Spirit, that you are an initiated adept, and I am supposed to believe that you even are a world redeemer? Let me at once make it clear to you that, for my part, I entertain absolutely no wish that you or anyone else should believe anything whatever. I am anxious only to make people investigate for themselves the actual facts relating to the divine manifestation in palpable physical phenomena, in whomever and wherever this might appear, so as to change mere belief into certainty, ignorance into knowledge, and religion into science. I think that's very important here. I am desirous of subduing every form of personal worship and, on the contrary, am working for an ever-increasing recognition of the veritable existence of the Holy Spirit. So he's not really, I'm desirous of subduing every form of personal worship. So he always said that it's not about him as him, the person Martinez, it's about his work, right? So, and I really believe that Holy Spirit shines through his work, the Third Testament. When in the above I have spoken so freely, it is certainly not to draw attention to myself, my personal and private ego. I am not so naive as to imagine that a personal prestige is attainable by merely speaking of oneself. I am fully aware that only a demonstration of the real facts will supply religious material that would appeal to scientifically minded people of the 20th century. Flattering words will but delight fools. An homage on this plane of consciousness would only be the aim of a fool, that is, one who is overambitious, thirsting for personal honor and admiration, wishing to be adored, lionized, and idolized, hence regarding everything else as of minor importance. But how is such an individual to be a sober-minded and impartial channel for the manifestation of the truth in the supreme sense? Indeed, to a person for whom the verification of truth is of less importance than the admiration of himself, truth will be veiled in as far as he is hankering for mere adoration. And the natural reaction characterizing a normal person in quest of the truth must be neutralized to the extent that he is the one coining the truth and not vice versa. The light of revelation, therefore, will inevitably be obscured by passing through individuals egotistically disposed. The essentials in this account and the basis of my appearance. At this juncture, I wish to emphasize that the question of who I am and what I know can be of only secondary importance. The main thing is to demonstrate that manifestation of the Holy Spirit, that is, an event in the Bible designated a revelation, actually has taken place, while I was wide awake within the scope of my realistic experience. The question of making anyone believe in this revelation may, for my part, be left open. But what, on the other hand, I do want to stress is to demonstrate that the revelation or manifestation of the Holy Spirit referred to need not be anything miraculous or mysterious, but an absolutely sober and perspicuous reality, in its way subject to analysis, as intelligible as any other realistic phenomena that we all meet within our daily experiences. Consequently, my aim is confined to that of founding a basis for the attainment of knowledge in spheres where my fellow men have had to be content with belief, and accordingly build on what others have been telling them. To diffuse enlightened respect and veneration for the cosmic forces at work in life, to demonstrate that the golden rule of loving one another, that these are scientific essentials sacred to me, all this is the sole basis of my life. Every little area within the labyrinths of mysticism that I may be allowed to transform into veritable science, tending to make God a reality in the minds of my fellow men, is thousandfold more valuable to me than the blind adoration of a million fools. Trusting that I may have made this clear, and that it may prove an aid in your appreciation of truth sublime, and continue to study my manifestations, I shall just remind you of your own world Redeemer's dictum, for the tree is known by its fruits. To transpose into science the quintessence of eternal truths uttered by sages throughout the ages, will thus in loving kindness be constituting my fruits. Situations in which it is urgent to speak rather than keep silent. For a person who has outgrown any craving for adoration and admiration, it is unpleasant to speak of himself, especially when at the same time he is widely considered a principal character to whom a certain heroic glamour is ascribed. But situations may arise when it would be unkind and contrary to the divine principles to keep silent. Such situations, for instance, must have occurred in the case of Christ, for he found occasion to assert himself by saying, "Which of you can convince me of sin? Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart. I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live." From these words we must not infer that they are expressive of any form of arrogance or complacency, even as it would be wrong to conclude that their author was reveling in the enjoyment thereof. On the contrary, he was well aware that his utterances to this effect might ultimately result in his crucifixion. But his words were expressive of a truth, a reality, a revelation, a most significant part in the formation of man's destiny, of which event he was the first and only one that was fully cognizant, being predestined to be the spokesman for the Holy Spirit, for on him was contingent the redeeming manifestation of this very Spirit in the earthly zone. But as he alone possessed the veritable knowledge of the spiritual manifestation, and it had not at all been the divine purpose to keep this central truth secret, who should be better qualified to act as the intermediary exponent of this to men than Jesus of Nazareth? If he had been so humble and modest as to keep secret the truth so abundantly revealed in and about him, his humility and modesty would have surpassed its bounds and become abnormal, turned into cowardice and mental deficiency, the world-redeeming secret would have been buried with him. But in this situation, face to face with such a risk, he was bound to speak instead of keeping silent, though by so doing he could not help disclosing himself as the hero he was by giving an account of what to him was essential. But as it was a truth that was to be disclosed, and as he alone had the knowledge of this, he was constrained to make known with what authority and power he had been invested. And so it can only be a fool, that is, a person who has no idea whatever of the inherent facts, that will find megalomania, arrogance, or self-glorification in these sayings of Jesus. But inasmuch as there are always plenty of ignorant people, and as he among the teeming millions of the world happened to be the only one able to say these words with authority, he would naturally, in the first instance, be misunderstood by the crowd, charged with being out of his mind, and ironically crowned as the King of the Jews, and finally, by the same mob, in their blind fanaticism, be exposed to mutilation and crucifixion. But his words turned out to be a halo of light, blazing across the perpetrators of the crime, preparing for them, from primitive barbarity, a luminous path, leading the mentality of vulgar humanity to the heights of humanism. Suppose that he had preferred to keep silent, owing to fear of contempt and mockery on the part of the mob, or to the prevailing tendency to murder and mutilate. The world-saving principle would then have resulted in an irrevocable failure. Whatever opinions people nowadays may entertain about the Church and her ministrations, we should, in case of original failure on the part of Jesus, have been without our excellent hospital and ambulance service, extending a helping hand to wounded and suffering humanity amidst the horrors of the battlefield, as well as in the otherwise peaceable home. The modern administration of justice, philanthropy, charitable institutions, and all the rest of humane arrangements comprising everything denoted Christian civilization, the fountainhead of which is traceable to and identical with the message of the Redeemer, his Sermon on the Mount, his parable of the Good Samaritan, etc. Had Jesus kept silent, therefore, a world of dark and dreary barbarism to a much greater extent than we now encounter would have predominated throughout, and genuine Christianity would nowhere on the face of the earth have left any trace whatever. Why it is my duty to speak, rather than keep silent. It is thus obvious that there are times when a person, by keeping silent, may give rise to disastrous situations. Consequently, he must perforce speak his mind, even though this may jar on the ears of the uninitiated and be taken for arrogance, egotism, or self-glorification. Anyone having experienced the revelation of the Holy Spirit will, more or less, find himself in such a situation. And as I have had this very experience, I am bound to say so, even at the risk of being misunderstood. In spite of this risk, accordingly, I feel that the events, which to me are absolute facts, are of a nature so significant and of such a cogency that I find myself more in contact with the divine purpose and the meaning of life by speaking up, rather than otherwise, no matter what the uninitiated critic may think of it. And what vexation the misconception on the part of the majority may incur For does it not say, fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul? On this basis, I am now going to relate a little of what enabled me to draw up an analysis of the world, through which the eternal world picture, with its great answers and immortal sentences from the Bible, from the earth's greatest sages, add up to a mathematical unit, thereby transposing the greatest truths of life into science, art, and love. And then he goes on. That's, as you can see here, the contents. We read 7 through 12. So if you get the book and read on, it talks about a little bit about the history, what he was doing in his life before he actually went through the great birth, the state I was in before these spiritual experiences, and then the actual meditation where he meditates on God. He sat down and he meditated on the question, what is God, right? And then he goes on and explains what actually happens, and then he calls it the golden baptism of fire and the effects and so forth. So this is a really small book, and it's what, 68 pages long. You can read it in an hour or so, but it's a very good introduction to what actually enabled Martinez to write this work and this 9,000 pages of text. And he basically was working on his work for 60 years. That was his life mission. Yeah. So On the Birth of My Mission, highly recommended, and hope you pick it up or read it. And you can also read it for free on martinez.dk. And anyway, see you next time, and thanks for today. See you soon.